Hi everyone. In this video, I'm actually going to share something directly out of my program, and that is Introduction to Nmap. So Nmap is one of those programs that whether you are on the offensive or defensive side of cybersecurity or even in IT, it's a utility and program that you definitely want to know. So what I'm going to do is share with you a clip from my training program that will introduce Nmap and teach you how it's used. So enjoy this and make sure that you like and subscribe to my channel. And if you're looking for training that actually gets you hands-on, make sure you click the link below to see if my training program is right for you. So here we go with Nmap. Enjoy the video. Thank you. So here's my terminal. And what I'm going to do is I have a host somewhere on my network. So if I do an if config, I know that my IP address is 10.10.10.17, and I know my network by the subnet mask right here is, and I'll type it in here, let me hit clear, is 10.10.10.0 through 255. So let's run an Nmap scan against my entire network. The way I can do that is Nmap, and I'm just going to run a default scan to get information, and I'm going to run it against 10.10.10.0/24. And when I hit, actually I'm going to output that to a file, and I'll call it network scan. And the reason I'm doing it is it'll be easier for me to kind of show you that. So if I hit enter, what's going to happen is it's going to scan the entire network, and it did it very quickly. And if I do what's called cat my network scan, it's going to show me all the hosts that it found. Now I don't have a lot running on this, so let's look at our findings here. We found 10.10.10.1, and we see that DNS is running because we have port 53. So this host is running DNS. We have 10.10.10.2 that's running ports 5,000 and 7,000, and it looks like it's a file server. Quite interesting. Well, here's my host, .17, and it looks like everything's closed. And here's an interesting host, this 10.10.10.18, and oh, look at there, it's running a web server. Let's use that to learn more about that host. So note down from my example, it's going to be 10.10.10.18, and let's run a variety of different scans against this host to learn even more. So the first scan I want to write or run is, let's run a SYN scan. So I'm going to run nmap -ss for SYN, and we want to run that on 10.10.10.18. So you see the structure of the command. So I'm typing in nmap, I'm specifying the option, and then I'm specifying the host, and then I'm running enter. In this case, notice that it wants root. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sudo, so I'm going to switch user to root. And the reason that is it has to craft a package. So unless you're running, you could run sudo and then nmap, or you could switch to root. So you could do either one. In this case, I'm going to just switch to root. Run clear, and now I'm going to run nmap -ss against 10.10.10.18. So if you can't see this, it's -lowercase s -uppercase s, and I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to run a SYN scan. And of course, what responded is that TCP port 80. Now, let me prove that to you. So let's do this. So we want to run here next is let's run a TCP scan against port 80, which we already know is open. So we should see that respond. So I'm going to type in here nmap -st for TCP, and I'll put a P for port and an 80, and I'm going to run against our host.18. And when I hit enter, we're going to see that it is open. Now watch this. If I change this, so if I type nmap -s, lowercase s, uppercase t, -p, and let's do 88. So we know that port is not open. And then we specify our host. Now when I hit enter, what's going to happen is it's going to say TCP 88 is closed. So you see what happened there is it said, I specified what to check. And in this case, I said, run. Okay, this is a little easier. So here's the command I just wrote. I wrote nmap -s, uppercase T for TCP, -p for port, and 88 against this host 10.10.10.18. And when I hit enter, you see that it's closed. Now, that's fine, but let's run something. I'm going to run nmap -st, and let's do a port range. I'm going to do a port from 70 to 90 and see if anything responds against 10.10.10.18. And when I hit enter, look what happens here. Is it's scanning all the ports that I specified. So I did this example to show you scanning a range of ports, and it's telling me what the response was. So in this case, all of these were closed. Notice that 80 or HTTP was open, so that's what I expected, and then the rest of these were closed. Look at the information this is providing. You see how powerful this is, and I'm actually able to craft very specific scans. So because I know 80 is open, I'm going to specify all my attacks on that port so that I don't draw any more attention than is necessary, because if someone's monitoring from my host, they're going to see that I'm scanning all those different ports, which means that an IDS is probably going to be triggered because they see sequential ports being scanned. Those are the type of activities that we want to avoid. So let's see what else we can do here. I'm going to hit clear. Let's scan and see if there's any UDP ports open. So I'm going to do nmap -lowercase s u for UDP, and I'm going to scan port 80 to see if that's open. And I'm going to put a comma here and put 53 to see if maybe there's DNS. And I'm going to put my host. And I'm going to hit enter. And look what happens. So UDP 53 is closed and UDP 80 is closed, which is what I expected. So again, I'm learning here that there's nothing UDP running on this host. So I'm going to hit clear. And again, these are just examples to show you how you can use this. And let's run a fin scan. So what a fin scan will do is it's going to give me more information about any ports that are listening, closed, if there's a firewall. So let's do an nmap -s capital F and just specify the host, and let's see what information we get back. So right here I see TCP filtered. That means that something is monitoring that port. So again, that's giving me a little bit more information of what's going on with this host. Now let's see if we can figure out what operating system is running on this. So I'm going to hit clear. And to do that, again, you see I'm using all the different switches here. So think of what you want to do and then use those options to accomplish that. So in this case, what I want to do is I'm going to run nmap -so against 10.10.10.18. So what this does is it tries to detect the operating system. And let's see if it's able to figure out what operating system. And what it does, it runs a series of packets, and depending upon the response and how the operating system responds, Nmap is smart enough to figure out what operating system or even guess the operating system. So this might take a little bit of time here. So let's let this run. All right, how interesting. It wasn't able to guess the operating system, and that's fine, that happens. So we can do other things. So watch this. So the next thing is let's figure out the version that's running. Maybe HTTP. What's going on here? So let's run an Nmap -sv, and watch this. Now I'm going to combine options. So we're going to run st against TCP -p for port 80, and I want to run that on my host. So when you're combining commands or these options and switches, you really want to think out what it is you're trying to accomplish. So as you're starting out, this is probably one of the more difficult things to do because sometimes you won't get the right options combined and Nmap will complain, and that's fine. The whole idea is for you to experiment and start to learn and gain an understanding. But look at the logic of what I'm doing here is I said, let's run Nmap. Let's look for the version. So that dash s, lowercase s, capital V says, hey, try to see if you can figure out the version. Well, what version am I running? So I'm looking at TCP. So lowercase s, capital T says, well, look at TCP. Go to the specific port -p, which is 80, because we know there's HTTP, and run it against this host. So if I hit enter, let's see if it's able to give us anything on the version. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. That's part of collecting the information. Well, look at this. How awesome is this? Port 80, it figured out that it's running Apache, so that's the server. It even gave us the version, and it even guessed that it's probably running on Ubuntu. Well, here's why this is important. If I'm a pen tester, I'm going to look for exploits that might be available for this version of Apache. And if you watch any channels that use pen testing or examples, you'll find, or if you even study pen testing, you'll find that the versions are important because exploits are typically targeted to a specific version. So by learning the version of something, you can then go to your tools and look to see if there are any options for attacking that version. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you is running some of the NSE or Nmap script engine scripts against a host. There are hundreds, or I want to say there's about 6,000 different scripts that you can run. There are a lot of different NSE scripts that are pre-written, and what they do is they are written to provide you with specific information. So I've given you a link in the PDF that lists all of the NSE scripts, and what you can do is, depending on your findings, you can go and search to see if there's anything that matches that NSE script. So I'm going to run one randomly here, since we know we have an HTTP server. What I'm about to do here is going to blow your mind. This is how powerful Nmap is. So what I'm going to do, since I know I have an HTTP server, right? So remember what I ran. I ran an Nmap, and I said, get me information from TCP on dash port 80 on 10.10.10.18, right? And I ran this, and it came back and it said that we had an Apache server, and it's running right now, and I'll show you that. So we see the Apache HTTPD. So I know I have an HTTP server. There are NSE scripts that can enumerate an HTTP server. And here's an example. Again, you want to look up the scripts, and eventually what happens is you'll start to get used to looking up the scripts and then running them against the host. So I'm just going to show you this example here so you see. So I'm going to clear the screen, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to run Nmap, and I'll put a dash, and script equals, and then it's called HTTP enum, and I'm going to run it against my host. Okay, now what this script does is it tries to enumerate and obtain as much information as possible from my HTTP or my web server. Again, I can use that to figure out versions and then look at my exploits to see if I have anything to attack those versions. If I hit enter, watch what happens. So first of all, it says that First of all, look at the time it took. It was very quick. Then it tells me that the host is online. So that's an active host. And it's saying that port 80 is open and listening for HTTP requests. Here's the enumeration output. Look at this. It scanned all of the directories and files and even told me what they are. So this wp-login.php, that's an admin folder. That means I could potentially use that to obtain admin access. It identified that it's running WordPress version 2. Again, I can look up exploits for that version. It has all the different information that it acquired from the directories and what it found. So it found images, it found queries, and even told me what versions. I mean, this is incredible information here. It found a login page, and it told me that it's WordPress login. It even has an admin's upgrade PHP. So again, I never would have known this had I just looked at this server. It has a readme.html file. Again, that's more information if I look at that. And then there's something that's called /hidden. Interesting, there's probably things in there. So as you can see, now look at this. Let's go to the website. So I've learned that there's a /hidden right here. So let's open a browser and let's see if we can go to that site. So http 10.10.10.18/hidden, and let's see if there's anything in there. Look at this. You change Hugo's password when you can, send it to him so you continue uploading files. I found something that I probably wasn't supposed to see. Interesting, just by running that quick scan. So as you can tell, I can use this to take advantage and run something that takes advantage of that version and potentially launch an exploit that gives me access to that computer. That's how hackers work. It's what they do is look for those different clues, and they get very, very creative. But you see Nmap not only mapped out my network, but I actually use it to enumerate and obtain information. Network information, port information, versions, the list goes on, up to and including enumerating an entire website to obtain access to all sorts of information that I otherwise wouldn't have known. So go through the PDF, practice using those commands, get comfortable with them, and play around with different combinations. Some are going to work for you, some won't, but as you're doing them, make sure you think through what you're combining, okay? That way, as you do that, you'll start to understand and get used to Nmap, which, again, it's something that you want to know going into an interview, and especially as you work, whether you're a pen tester, SOC analyst, security engineer, Nmap is a tool that you will use in all circumstances. It's an absolute must-know, very similar to TCP dump. Those are two that are very popular, highly used. So I encourage you to practice, get used to this, reference that PDF. I've put a lot of very useful commands, and play around with some of the NSE scripts. They're very easy to use. You just need to know the script name, which you can look up in the link that I gave you, and then run it against a host to see if there's any information available. All right, we'll continue that. Thank you, and hopefully now you have a little more insight into how to use Nmap. Good job. Keep going. Thank you.